So, many of you that have had the misfortune of being diagnosed with cancer, you may have had a G tube or a gastrointestinal tube or something like that installed so that you could continue to eat even when they're doing the treatments on your throat. Well, the second misfortune that I experienced was being referred to a so-called nutritionist. I smelled something not right there right out the get-go, and sure enough, the experts over there at this Coram home feeding thing prescribed a wonderful product that I refer to as sugar water. You may have experienced something similar. Look at this, it's made by Nestle's, and the ingredients, the second highest content is corn syrup. So within a week of going on this sugar water, I lost 10 pounds. So instead of asking the so-called nutritionist, I went straight to my oncologist and asked if I could put anything in there other than this sugar water. She said, of course I could, as long as it doesn't clog up the tube. So I went about making my own food and gained back 5 pounds the next week and felt way better. Now, a disclaimer here, this is not medical advice, but I do want you to know that you do have other options. So this is what I do. Okay, so first of all, everything goes through the food processor. So at first I measured everything so I could track what was going in, but I don't really do that anymore. But the cool thing here is that you can put just about anything in here. You don't taste it, so now's the time to eat a bunch of that good for you food that you don't really like too much. So I do make a separate batch out of fruit, and I use everything that can be peeled that doesn't have an exterior surface that would have bacteria on it. It is something you need to pay attention to. Everything that's going in these batches is thoroughly cooked, nothing raw. You can't have bacteria going in because your white blood cell count's going to be down from the treatments. So, as far as actual ingredients, I try and use a base that has a pretty high calorie count. In this batch I used rice and used a 15 bean mix and sweet potatoes and yams. They got a good high calorie count too. And of course we can't forget all the wonderful vegetables that we can add to the mix. I think in this one I had all kinds of stuff. I had spinach, kale, rutabagas, parsnips, carrots, peas, beets, sweet peppers, cauliflower, broccoli, and probably a few other things. I know I gave the clerk at the grocery store a good test on how well she knew her produce. And then for protein, I have chicken, tuna, and eggs. Now this all takes some liquid too to keep it thin enough to go through the tube. So I use milk when I need to, but I try and use all the cooking water from everything too so I don't lose any of the nutrients. Now, as all this is going along, I'm making a batch that's obviously bigger than what will fit in the processor all at once. So each portion from the processor I dump into a bigger pot until I have all the ingredients combined. Then I mix it up in the pot pretty good and run it through the processor one more time. Now, one thing to consider in all this is how long it will take you to accomplish this once you start dumping ingredients into the pot. They are still steaming hot after being cooked, but you don't want to take too much time that it cools down too much. The basic rule of thumb here is no less than 140 degrees because bacteria can start to form. So if you need more time, put the pot on the stove and set it on low so it doesn't cool off too much. Then as you can see here, the last part is to put the mix into individual containers. I use glass for the portions that I'll be using right away, but don't try to freeze anything in glass jars. I learned that the hard way. But I use square and rectangular plastic containers to get as tight a fit in the freezer as possible. Round containers just take up too much space. So I'll do another video on how to actually use this mix, but for now I'll leave you with the thought that nutrition is a huge part of your treatment, and if you've been led down the sugar water trail, I'd advise you to explore your options well before resigning yourself to trying to survive on corn syrup.